Hello YouTube, Robin Hood Bricks here, and just in case anyone thought my cargo train wasn't long enough, I thought I'd better make it even longer. So looking at my cargo train, I was kind of deciding what additional carriages I might want to add, and I was thinking that tankers were a major constituent part of most cargo trains as far as I can tell. Now, I've already got the large octane tanker from set 7939 cargo train from 2010, and that is rather fantastic. I've taken off the ladders just off the side so it doesn't sort of flip out at high speed and hit an obstacle around my city, but I'm very happy with this tank. But I was also aware of a second Lego set that was in existence way back from 1993, which was the twin tank transporter set 4537. Now I think you'll agree that's got an absolutely fantastic and interesting shape, and I thought I'd really like to have one of those going around on my train as well, because this is probably some liquid like even gasoline or petrol or something like that, whereas something with these sort of smaller, rounder type containers, I'm thinking would have something like more like a liquefied gas, so LPG or something like that in it. Although I have done a Google search and tried to find a real life example just to show you in this video really of what one of these might look like, and I literally can't find one. So I don't think these very sort of small rounded tanks where there's a pair of them on one wagon really actually exist in real life, probably because it's much more economical to have a great big tank like this if you're going to be moving things across a great big distance than wasting a load of space in the middle with just two smaller round tanks. Anyway, so I wanted to build that set, as I say, 4537, but the problem is that it costs an absolute fortune. If you were to buy that set in relatively good condition on eBay, it would set you back at least £100, which is just crazy money for a small wagon, because I don't really need that truck that comes with the set. You can get one on Bricklink for about £45, but again, that's still, well, too much, quite frankly. So what I thought I'd do is try and source the parts to make my own version of the wagon without the truck and box and instructions and all the rest, to bring down the cost, but also exclude any parts that might be, bumping it up unnecessarily. So if we think about those two really iconic shaped tanks on the back of that wagon, they're made up of three parts in the main, all in white. The faceted bottom part, the faceted top part, and a 3x3 faceted brick kind of in the middle. There's also some stripes as well, but those are easy to source, so aren't a problem at all. Now, as it turns out, you can get one of these or one of these for about 50p each, and the fact that I'll need 8 of them means that these pieces collectively will come to, well, about £8, which is still quite a lot, but it's fairly reasonable considering these parts are quite intricate and haven't been used by Lego many times. So these are part numbers 2463 for the top and 2464 for the bottom. Now, the real problem comes, at least for me, with the faceted brick in the middle, which is 2462 facet 3x3 brick. And that's because that one actually cost about £5 each for one of those bricks. Now that is what I'm not willing to pay, and after all I'd need 8 of them, so I'd just be paying £40 just for those bricks, so no way. So my first task was to see if I could do something useful with just these parts, without the ones in the middle, and create a slightly amended version of the original set that would still look good and have that iconic shape that I'm really interested in seeing around Brick Nottingham. So let's go into Lego Digital Designer and see what I could come up with. Alright, so here we are in Lego Digital Designer, my Lego design program of choice, even if it is out of date, just for historic reasons. And here is the original set built in that program, 4537, Twin Tank Transporter. And as I've said, there are a few things I want to change. First of all, I want to get rid of the truck and the man. Right, that was easy. Then I want to change these tanks to get rid of the requirement to have these incredibly, cripplingly expensive facet bricks. I also, while I'm here, want to change the top because I think that looks really weird with all these studs showing. It kind of looks like a Christmas tree. I think that looks really weird. Also, I want to get rid of the old style buffers with those bits on. And I also want to get rid of this spacing because there's a weird sort of gap at each end here. And then there's quite a big gap between the two round or spherical tanks, and obviously the same at the other end. So I don't really like how it is anyway. So let's use some more modern pieces and give that a fix while we're at it. So starting with the tanks, they are the original tanks here with those facet bricks in them. And the first thing I thought about doing to exclude them was just to replace them with wedge plates instead, 3 high, which does add the extra sort of stud holes on the side, but otherwise is a direct replacement. And that looks quite good, doesn't look too bad. This could be some sort of patterning on the outside. I don't mind that at all, but I thought I'd try alternative things just to see how they looked as well. So the next thing I tried was actually having no white layer in between them at all. And I quite like that. It does look quite squat, kind of a bit compact, but at least it's very clean. So yeah, but I kind of figured that they were a bit small for such a large wagon. It was barely worth transporting them if that's all they can carry. So I kept going, and I thought the best compromise was probably having 2 sets of wedge plates in between the octane stripe and the top and bottom, and that's because it basically gives the result that is the most spherical. Because I think the reason that these tanks, if they really do exist, on a train at least, is because they are spherical, because the sphere uses the least amount of material to enclose the cargo within, but also is probably the most strong at doing so. And I thought with this proportion of plates in the middle, it kind of looked the most round or spherical. So I thought that was probably the best way forward. So that's what I've gone for. And then it only remains to do the top of the tanks. And I thought by adding this setup, it would make it a lot more clean. So there we go. So there's the tanks done. Now to the base. So here is the original base again with the old tanks back on, and there's a direct swap with the new tanks on, and in order to do that I had to turn the reel sideways. I've added some warning signs on the outside, but I'm still not happy with the length of it. I mean, you can kind of see that it looks too long. It just looks like, well, really fragile as well at this point. It looks like you'd almost give that a good yank and it'd break there. So I thought I'd need to shorten it quite a bit. So on the next version, I did manage to raise the tanks a little bit just so I could get the reel, the hose reel, sideways again, because I think it looks a lot better in that orientation. And I've got rid of that gap at each end near the buffers. That means I've got quite a large setup now in the middle, which is what I was trying. And that looks quite good, I think. I almost could have stopped there. But then I kept going and went even smaller. So here I've just reduced the space in the middle from 6 studs to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just to see if that made more of an impression. And it's harder to do things in odd numbers, and as you can see the screen's kind of offset from the middle, but I thought it was worth a go. But kind of looks weird and it's less strong, so I moved on from there. And this is the one I went with at the end, which is signified by the green brick. And that is a good compromise between all of the ones beforehand. We've got the 6 gap in the middle, but no gap on the 2 ends. We've got the tanks only 1 brick space apart because they're offset by half a stud each, and they are linked and in the right spherical proportion with the lovely warning signs as well. So that is the model I went for. And if we just compare the end result with the starting point, I think you'll agree that it's a lot more sort of modern looking, a bit more economical with space, and a bit more interesting as well. So I think my result, if I do say so myself, is an improvement on the old one. So the money I'm saving is not the only bonus, but just that we're going to have a better carriage at the end of the day. All right, so that was my solution to the expensive problem of trying to source all the original parts. But in this method, I'll still need the 4 of the tops and the 4 bottoms for each tank, and the load of wedge plates as well, and they're very easy to build. First of all, we'll do the iconic octane stripe of red on top of green. And it's very important actually when buying old white pieces especially to consider the aging of the white colour, because you might be able to see the difference between two of these. The one on the right has decoloured quite a bit actually. It's sort of more of a creamy white as opposed to sort of a white. And you can use hydrogen peroxide to try and bleach these colours back to their originals. But these aren't so bad, and because they're going to be on a dirty old rail wagon, I'm not really that bothered. But it is probably worth asking your vendor to see a picture of the actual pieces in question before buying them, especially if they're very expensive, just because this fading can get a lot worse than this. And you can end up with something that's almost sort of tan. I mean, literally, you would put it next to a tan brick and it would look the same. So that's an incredibly dark white, if you ask me. But yeah, so having actually experienced that in real life, I would definitely recommend that to everyone else. So here we go. 2 white stripes of plates as well to get that proportion right. And then we can just put on all the top and all the bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I have these sort of faded bits, because you can see it more when they're side by side, kind of facing into the middle where you won't see it as much, then I don't think it will be too much of a problem. I can also make sure that my slightly faded ones on the bottom half are lined up with the faded ones on the top half. So it's almost like we had a sort of small leak maybe and it kind of ran down. And I might be on the lookout for the odd one to replace the worst ones, but it's not a massive problem. So in real life, there is one of our round LPG tanks, and I think the proportion is right. I think it looks pretty good, even if it is unrealistic in real life. It got that wonderful stripe. I must not put this and that right next to each other, I think, when it's on the train. But that is, yeah, I think that's quite round and quite a good proportion. So here is another one. Looking good. Right, so we've got the most important and costly side of things fixed. So now I just need to build the wagon to put it all on and bring that into the current century as well. So I figured I'd probably build it on screen, even though the final model itself isn't going to be that much of a surprise to you. Well, you've already seen the thumbnail as per usual, I suppose. But this time even worse that we've actually looked at the design phase and kind of checked out those pictures, so we know exactly what we're aiming for as well. But hey ho, I'll build it on screen because I know people like to see that as well. Now I think the main point I was trying to do with the base was to make it really good and strong. So I've got those bracket pieces on the side so we can take some controls and pipes and things like that. But I've got it all sandwiched on these wheel assemblies from the top and most importantly from the bottom, because we've got those anti-studs on the underside there, and that just makes this thing completely sturdy. So that's really good. Then I can put on my magnet buffers onto each end, and this is the more modern type of course than the original would have had, and that's slightly better actually because then I can link them together using those 1x2 grill pieces that I hold that stud onto that stud from each of the carriages next to each other, and that just helps the train not have some sort of separation issue when it's going around my track. And then I can put a 4x4 on each end like that, so one of those will take one of the tanks each. Now what I wanted to do when kind of smartening this up was tidy up the top, because I figured the top was looking a bit, I don't know, old-fashioned really. So the way I wanted to do that was, rather than have the sort of 2x8 plate that was linking the two tanks together for strength, I thought I'd do that with a tile instead. So I've got a round jumper plate with one stud on the top for each of them, because I think that looks very neat. And then I wanted to link them together using a 1x8 tile. Now that looks really good if you ask me. Any closer and they'd be touching, but it does mean we've got a very narrow gap in the middle. We used to have 2 on the original set, now we've only got 1. So I'm actually going to have to offset each of these by half a stud on the bottom in order to get that spacing right at the top. So the way I'm going to do that is by having these 1x3 jumper plates with 2 studs on, basically mounted in pairs on each side, and they'll hold on to the bottom whilst bringing it in that vital half a stud. Now while I'm here, I'm just going to add these modified plates as well, because they're going to take the signs, much like this one that's got these sort of flammable content type signs. I got 4 of these, so I've just added 4. A real life one will probably have 1 on each side, but you know me, if I've got more, I'll add more. Yeah. So this one I'm going to instead add a similar one, just so they're not identical, which has still got a sort of flammable symbol on and some instructions presumably. And they're actually from a fire set, believe it or not, from the fire ladder truck 60109. And I've only got 2 of these, but that's fine. So 1 on that corner and 1 on that corner, I think will look really good when this is all set up. And then the only thing left to really do on this bare bones type setup is to do some controls kind of in the middle. And I managed to get 2 of the original computer. That one's a bit scuffed, but I've got another one coming to replace that, so it'll look a bit better. And that one's fine. And they're mounted actually on the side, so they're kind of upside down. But I think that looks really good because those 3 things there really do look like those kind of valve handles that you would physically turn. And there we've got the pressure on both sides and presumably the balance between them or something like that. So they look really good. And then just for a splash of colour, I've got a yellow sort of tap piece for both sides as well. Not sure if that should really face up or down really. I suppose down. Things don't go well out of taps when they're facing up. Oops, I've just knocked that off. And then I've got a clip for both sides. Now we can't have the hose that will be wrapped around the middle on both sides, but I'm going to have it just attached to one. So I'll have that on that side. And it just so happens that I had one of these wonderful hose pieces that probably used to come from a fire engine in yellow as well. And I thought that would be the nice colour to sort of contrast as we've got here, because black on black on black really doesn't show up very well. And that's on quite a long one of these. So I'm going to have to knot it and tie it around here. And then that can go in the middle between the tanks. So I'll probably wrap that on next. And then we can put on the tanks and have the final unveiling. Ooh. Okay, so there's the reel all neatly wound on. I usually spend a little bit of time just making sure that the colour of the reel isn't showing through by winding this very carefully and evenly so it looks a bit neater. But that's probably just my OCD showing up. But nonetheless, there is a very nice carriage. So all that remains really is to put these 2 on the jumper plates. And you'll see it's very close to the reel, which I kind of like actually, because it's no space wasted. And then that can go on top. Yeah, and that's mainly what the design process was trying to do, to get the balance right between the length of the carriage and the cargo on top of it, and all of the interesting gubbins in the middle, and our colourful signs, and so on. So, yeah, I think that looks really good, actually. It might not be realistic in real life, as we've discussed. I don't really know, but I think that that is going to be a really nice, interesting shape that's very different to be seeing on the back of my cargo train. And I really like the yellow of the hose and so on, because I think that shows up really well. I might turn that a little bit. Don't know. Yeah. So do tell me what you think, but I think that's a pretty good update. And it was very cost effective in that it only cost me probably about £10. Well, probably plus a bit more for the wheels, probably more like £15 than the 100 or 40 odd that it would have cost me elsewhere. So I'm very happy indeed. Do tell me what you think. Well, I do hope you enjoyed the development journey of this carriage, all the way from the idea of getting the old set through sourcing the pieces to designing an alternative and getting it into Brick Nottingham. I think the outcome speaks for itself. It's a really, really interesting wagon, so very happy with that. So as always, thank you very much for watching. It is appreciated. Do remember to like, comment and subscribe for more awesome LEGO videos. And if you value this channel, there are many ways in which you can support it. Do check out the links in the description below. And next time on Robin Hood Bricks, we'll be doing a brick haul, as per usual, on Wednesday, when it will be brick haul o'clock. And then on Friday, I think we'll be back in Far Corner Farm for part 3. And hopefully we'll be finishing the farm in that session. But I'm really looking forward to it. So, see you then!